Going to hopefully get us live on Instagram as well. Huh. Okay, so just bear with me 1 second, Facebook, and those of you here live in Zoom, I'm just going to get us live on one more channel. So let me do that. Okay. Almost there. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Okay. So we got quite a few of you live with us here. We've got quite a few live on Facebook, a few people joining us live on Instagram, and then several more of you with us live here on Zoom. For those of you who don't know, my name is Andrew Wool. I'm the managing partner of CPA for IT. We're an accounting firm specializing in small service-based businesses. And we've been doing that since my father founded the firm back in 1984. So over the years, we have learned lots of tips and tricks on how to help small business owners like yourself save time and save money. In fact, our mission at CPA for IT is to help our clients organize their finances, create wealth, and transform wealth into a legacy. Today, we're talking specifically about QuickBooks Online and helping you to organize your finances. Now, I wanted to start with just a little bit of an explanation of what QuickBooks Online is and why I think it's such an amazing product for small business owners. So the first thing to know and understand about QuickBooks Online, it is that it's not a magic pill. Garbage in, garbage out. If you don't keep your books organized, using a tool like QuickBooks Online, which is going to help automate the process, is just automating garbage. So we want to make sure that we have a system and a process, and QuickBooks Online can be a part of that process to help us keep our information organized easily and efficiently. One of the biggest advantages that QuickBooks Online brings to the small business community is the ability to use artificial intelligence and business rules to eliminate a lot of the drudgery associated with doing bookkeeping. So bookkeeping, I know it's not the #1 thing most of you want to do, but you all know that you have to do it. And you have to do it because you need to file a tax return. And the government doesn't like it when you don't file that tax return on time. And if you wait till the end of the year to go ahead and go through all your receipts and start organizing all your information, one, you're probably going to miss out on some receipts that have faded over time or that you've lost. Two, it's a lot of work to do all at one time a year. So you're going to put it off and procrastinate and leave it till as late as you possibly can. And then you're possibly late dealing with interest and penalties and all the negative associations that go along with taxes. But by using the right tools and technology, you can make this whole process a lot more approachable and take a lot less time, which will in turn make it a lot more approachable. And so there's a couple of tools that we advocate for here at CPA for IT. And one of those is QuickBooks Online. The other one that we give to all of our clients completely free of charge is another product called Dex, formerly Receipt Bank, that can work with QuickBooks Online. But if you're interested in learning about that, you're going to have to come back to our Dex session, as today's session is really specifically focused on QuickBooks Online. And we're going to jump right into the product to show you a little bit about how the tool works and how you can use it to save yourself the headache and the burden of this big process of bookkeeping at the end of the year. So, as I said, it helps you by automating your bookkeeping using artificial intelligence and business process automation. So what do I mean by that? So what you can do with QuickBooks Online is first and foremost, and arguably the biggest time saver, is to connect it to the bank feed for your credit card statements and your banking account and your bank account. So now the number one mistake here is to connect it to all of your bank accounts, personal and business. No, we're using this to organize your business finances. So we want to connect it to your business credit card and your business bank account. If you don't already have a business credit card and a business bank account, again, go check our blog article on why you need to have a business bank account and a business credit card and go and set one up. If you don't have any credit history, you can get an American Express card, which gives a whole bunch of points, and we can even give you a referral incentive, which will give you some extra bonus points. But you should have a credit card that's under the business name. If you can't, for whatever reason, get a business credit card under the business name, use a credit card that's under your personal name exclusively for business. And this is, again, to help you keep organized, right? We want to separate business expenses from personal expenses to make your bookkeeping process as easy and as approachable as possible, so that you're not categorizing a bunch of transactions that are irrelevant to your business. If you want to categorize those, again, another great product from Intuit called Mint, completely free of charge. Go to your personal credit cards over in Mint so you can keep track of how you're allocating and spending your non-deductible expenses, which is a good business management or a money management tactic. But we want that separate from the business, because otherwise you're going to overwhelm yourself and you're going to create a bunch of extra work. So you're going to connect that credit card and you're going to connect that bank account. If you do have multiple credit cards, which I don't encourage, but you can connect multiple credit cards, but those should all be business cards. Now, the big advantage you're going to get is all those transactions that in the old school way of bookkeeping you would have had to type out can now flow into your QuickBooks Online account seamlessly. Now, I say seamlessly, but it's not entirely seamless, because the only downside with banking in Canada is that currently the Canadian banks consider that their information. And so they do a whole bunch of things to basically break that feed every couple of months. So you've got to log in every, I'd say, 2 to 3 months, just to make sure the bank is still connected. And if it's not, make sure you reconnect that feed so that those transactions are flowing in. But if you just log in every 2 to 3 months into your bank account and reconnect your bank account, which is as simple as logging in to your bank account, just like you would, and using the multi-factor authentication to authenticate that you are who you say you are, then all those transactions will flow in. Now, the reason I say every 2 to 3 months is because banking transactions, QuickBooks will go back up to 3 months and pull that information from you. If it's beyond 3 months, you're going to have to do a manual download and then import. So if you're doing a cleanup, if you've got a whole year's worth of work to do, there are ways to get more than 3 months into QuickBooks Online, but it does involve you going to your bank account or your credit card, downloading a CSV or a comma separated values document, which is sort of like a fancy word for a document that QuickBooks can understand, which is basically a spreadsheet in separated by commas, hence comma separated values, CSV. And then it can import all those transactions for you for the entire year, not just for 3 months. But if you're doing a bank feed where you're connecting it, it's actually only going to pull in the last 3 months of data. So it's really important to come in every 2 to 3 months to make sure that bank feed isn't broken, because if you come back in 4 months later and reconnect it, there could potentially be a gap. Okay, so there is a tool to help you figure out whether you've missed transactions, and this is called the bank reconciliation tool in QuickBooks Online. And again, for those of you who are on Facebook and who are following along live in the Zoom here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pull up my screen. Now, I do apologize to those of you who are here on Instagram, because I don't, as of yet, have a way to share my screen with you. So if you are on Instagram and you would like to see what I'm sharing on my screen, pop over, follow us on Facebook, and we are streaming live onto Facebook right now. CPA4IT is the company page. You can join us over there, and you'll be able to see this Inception page that I've got going on right now. I am logged in at the moment to QuickBooks Online, and I apologize that I'm sort of got this off kilter, but I've got a camera a bit in the way. And I'm logged into the sample company called Long for Success. By the way, named after my good friend Michelle Long, who wrote the sample client. I believe it was Michelle Long, anyways. And Long for Success is the sample client here that I've got to just show you exactly what we've got in QuickBooks Online. So as you can see, we've got a primary navigation, and I'm going to move you just a little bit, with your dashboard, your banking, your sales, your cash flow, your expenses, your projects, your payroll, your reports, your taxes, your mileage, your accounting, your My Accountant, and your apps as your primary navigation. You'll see under some of these sections, we do have some sub-navigation. For example, under banking, we have banking, rules, tags, and receipts. I'll talk about each of these in a second. And then for sales, we've got, again, some sub-navigation. We've also got another way of popping around here, which is our gear icon. So under our gear icon, which is another form of navigating around the product, we can access all the information around our company, including account and settings, managing users, custom form styles, chart of accounts, QuickBooks Labs, our lists, which is all lists, products and services, recurring transactions, attachments, custom fields, tags, currencies. Our tools, we can order checks, we can import data. So if you do have to import data, if you're moving over systems, there's a way to do that. There's also importing outside data, exporting data, reconciling. This is that bank reconciliation that I told you is really important. Budgeting, audit log, smart lock, and then some profile stuff that you can do as well. So these are your primary forms of navigation. The first thing I'm talking about is the banking, because the banking is absolutely critical. However, before you even do any banking transactions, the number one thing you want to do is import or create a standard chart of accounts, because you do need to process transactions and categorize them. This is one of the number one things that we do in bookkeeping, is we take all our revenue and expenses and we have to classify all the transactions that took place on our credit cards and our bank statements. But without a chart of accounts, we have nowhere to allocate these into. Now, QuickBooks will give you a default chart of accounts, which is a terrible chart of accounts, which is why after the 35 some odd years we've been in business, we have built our own custom standard chart of accounts for each one of our clients. This is available under the free resources section of our website. So you can go in and download a copy of our chart of accounts, which is an Excel file that you can then import into your standard chart of account. So you can come into your gear icon, you can import that out, and you can import a chart of accounts. I'm not going to do that today, but it's relatively simple process, and you'll be able to import any CSV. So you can create your own custom chart of accounts if you're not a client of ours. But if you are a client of ours, I do ask that you use our standard chart of accounts. The reason that I ask that you use our standard chart of accounts is because we have a standard chart of accounts so that we can do an industry benchmark and show you how you compare to the average and the median in our database that we've been doing for over 35 years. So if you're using a different chart of accounts, it's very hard for us to map you against the benchmark, which does use a standard chart of accounts. So use our chart of accounts so that we can give you more data and more insight into your business by providing you a benchmarking analysis. In addition, there's some things we're going to touch on today, like bank rules, that if you're not using standard chart of accounts, you won't be able to take our custom bank rules and be able to apply them to your QuickBooks account. So again, we strongly encourage you to use our standard chart of accounts. So you just simply go in and import that. But if you want to see what your chart of accounts is, you go into accounting, chart of accounts, and you can see your chart of accounts. Now, one of the most important things after you've created a standard chart of accounts is you can apply a default tax rate. So another thing that you're going to have to do is set up taxes for your business. Now, in Ontario, it's really easy. You just have basically HST. But if you're dealing with multiple provinces, you may have to set up a specific tax rate for the different provinces that you've got. Now, remember, when it comes to the services that you provide, GST, HST is charged based on where the benefit of the service resides. So from that standpoint, you have to make a determination of whether you should be charging GST, PST, and HST, HST only, PST only, whatever the case might be. And that's, again, generally speaking, based on where the benefit of the service resides, not where you reside. So if your end client is in the US, you probably don't need to charge anything. Whereas if they're in Alberta, you've got a completely different story, right? So setting up your taxes is an important step. But then once you set up your taxes, you can set up a different tax rate for each one of your accounts. Now, this is important from a time saving standpoint, because if you are on the quick method of HST here in Canada, then you do not need to track the HST or GST that you paid on various expenditures. Now, you still need to track it on your sales and your revenue, but on some categories like your fixed assets, but on most of your expenses, you don't need to track GST, HST, and in fact, you shouldn't, because then we're going to have to go and add it all back in. So one of the benefits of being on the quick method of HST is you don't need to break out the GST, HST, and all your expenses, and then you get to expense the full amount, including the HST, and then the HST is calculated based on a quick rate calculation, which here in Ontario would be 7.8% of the first 30,000 and 8.8% of everything above that of the revenue that you have billed. And so if you want more information, we do have an article on our website about quick method versus long method, and we've got a little calculator that you can use to figure out what is best for you. If you're in the service-based business, odds are the quick method is going to be better for you, unless you happen to have something like a US-based client where you're not collecting any GST, HST. And the quick method, which is 7.8% of zero, would be zero, whereas the long method, which is you subtract what you've paid on all your expenses from what you've collected, zero minus a number becomes a negative number, whereas zero times a number is still zero. So a negative would be a refund. So if you're not collecting GST, HST, but you're paying GST, HST on all your expenses, you would want to be on the long method. So once you have set up your tax rates, you can then come in here and choose the different tax rates that you want to be able to have for your different chart of accounts. So you can set up a default tax rate for each one of these transactions. In this case, we just have HST on, exempt, and zero rated. So I'm going to say I'm going to put that on for that expense type, which actually, so I'm going to edit that because I would not want to do that. I would not want to set up my bank account with a default transaction rate of HST on. Sorry, let's make that exempt and saving close. Now, what I also want to show you is you could, for example, select all your transactions quickly, and then you can do a back actions, and then you can set a default tax code really quickly for either all of them, or you can select a subset and quickly, either say they're all HST on, and then go back and reverse out the ones that wouldn't, or set them all to HST exempt, or all to zero rated, the thing to know and understand is exempt means it's you would use that for types of revenue that are exempt from HST. Zero rated means that there's no actual HST on it. It's not exempt, there's just no HST. So zero rated is probably the one you would want to use for quick method. Unfortunately, QuickBooks Online, their tax center is not designed for quick method because it's not really designed. Even though they say they're for small businesses, they're not really for true small businesses that we deal with. They're more SME based, believe it or not. And we deal with small owner managed type of businesses, average income of about 130 to $200,000 a year. And for those service-based businesses, the quick method is the better way. So once you've set your tax codes, then we can go into our banking section. And with our banking section, you can see in the sample client, we've got a Visa credit card and a checking account. This is sort of an ideal situation. One business card, one corporate bank account, okay? Now, what we can do if we want to add another account is we could link an account, and it's just gonna say, hey, who do you bank with, TD, and then you could, I don't need to start a free trial because this is demo account. It would prompt me to log in to my online bank account and then choose which bank account I'm trying to connect if you happen to have multiple bank accounts through that one login. And then it would show up in here on a regular basis. It would pull down these transactions. Now, if that feed or connection breaks for whatever reason, you will see an error message telling you that that bank feed is broken. As I said, really important to come in here every couple of months and figure out whether that bank feed is still working, because eliminating the data entry associated with all this information that comes through your bank account, including the description, the date, the amount, is a huge, huge, huge time saver. And it's one of the number one biggest benefits of QuickBooks Online. So if you're not coming in every couple months to make sure that that feed is still working, you're really, eliminating a lot of the benefits of the program. So why are you paying every single month for a product you're not making use of? So that's one of my things, my pet peeves that really drives me nuts when people set up a QuickBooks Online account, just to set it and leave it till the end of the year. You've got to come in every couple of months, set a reminder just to make sure that those bank feeds are working. Now, when you come in here, you're going to see there are a bunch of transactions that have come through. So we've got a Visa credit card, and we've got a checking account, and we can see the different transactions that need to be processed. So for example, I could go in here and we can see this has not come up with any suggestions. And the way QuickBooks Online works is it's first going to apply a business rule if the business rule exists. You have to create these business rules or bank rules if you want them to apply them. And bank rules are really powerful. And I'm going to show you how to create a bank rule really easily. If no bank rule exists, it's going to look based off of your transaction history of whether you've coded this transaction before in the past and make a recommendation. If you've never coded this transaction before in the past, it's going to then look to its database of other similar clients to see if they've coded anything from this vendor to a similar type of place. And if not, it's just going to make an intelligent guess. So our goal is to make this as easy and seamless as we possibly can. So when I come in to an individual transaction, I can choose to just say, hey, I want to categorize this to meals and entertainment. And I could categorize that, right? And just hit add. Oh, didn't like something. What did I not add? Oh, because I didn't choose a GST tax rate method for it. So let's say let's assume we're going to be on the quick method. And let's say it's going to be 0 rated. Okay. So now it processed that transaction. Now you can see it's come up with some matches already, and it now also has come up with a suggestion. Now this isn't a match to an individual transaction. This is just because it said, hey, you've coded to meals and entertainment before in the past, so I think this is meals and entertainment. Now I can go to this transaction and I can say, you know what? I don't want to have to just, approve that every single time. I want to create a bank rule that says, hey, I'm going to call this coffee. And I'm going to say, if my description contains, and you could say start with, I'm just going to say the word coffee. I want this to be a transaction type expense. I'm going to put it to meals and entertainment. I could even put a payee if I want, and I want that to be 0 rated. I could add tags. We're not going to talk too much about tags here. It's a little bit more advanced. But tagging is a way to be able to search and sort individual transactions. And then I can decide whether I want to automatically confirm transactions in this rule, which if I click auto add, then every time it runs this rule, it will automatically process that transaction for me and I won't need to approve it. For now, I'm going to turn that off because there are lots of reasons you don't want to auto approve transactions. Let me think of, for example, a vendor like Canadian Tire, the Bay, where it could be multiple different transactions. So it could be office supplies, or it could be computer supplies, or it could be automotive supplies. And so you want to just set up a general rule because most of the time when you go to the Bay, you're always buying the same thing. So you might create a rule for that, but you want to actually approve that every single time and not have it come through. So you can see now this transaction has come up and said, hey, there's a rule. So it's found a rule already for me. So I could just come in here and click add. And in fact, I would be able to come in and look at all of the transactions if I wanted that are recognized. So here I can come in and get a list of all my recognized transactions. And so here I've got one transaction where it's a bank rule that I've created. Whereas in this situation, I've also got a match to an individual expense transaction that was already created. So there are situations where you might have an expense transaction, either you manually entered it earlier, and now the payment has just finally come through, or you're using a tool like Dext, which is going to sync with QuickBooks Online, and you would have an expense transaction sitting in the expenses that is now going to match to the actual individual transaction. And in an ideal world, every single transaction on your bank statement is going to be matched to a supporting piece of documentation, either an invoice or an expense transaction. Unfortunately, in the real world, many times you don't have the supporting documentation for that, and that's where you'll use bank rules or what's often referred to in the industry as cash coding, where you're just coding the transaction from your debit card or your credit card. Cash coding is a huge time saver. It really reduces the amount of time that you spend doing your bookkeeping, but it doesn't provide an audit-proof set of books where you can drill down and see the supporting documentation. And that's why the gold standard is an audit-proof set of books where every single transaction is matched to an individual receipt, like this one is here, where you can go and you can look at the expense transaction, and hopefully the expense transaction would normally even have an attachment down here if it was coming through Receipt Bank, so that you could see the individual supporting documentation. But in this case, I could come in here to all these transactions, highlight all of them, and let's imagine there's more than two, and bam, I can accept that. Now imagine that was all of my transactions. I would be able to see absolutely everything and process it all in one click of a button. Now we've got a couple of other transactions in here. So we've got Supplies Depot, and I'm not exactly sure what that is supposed to be, and we can just categorize that again. We could create a bank rule if we wanted, and which I am always an advocate for creating a bank rule. And let's say that we're going to say that 0 rated, and I'm going to say ask my accountant, because if you're not sure, you still need to code it somewhere. And ask my accountant is a good category to be like, hey, I don't really know where this is supposed to go, so where should I put it? And then you can, either shoot an email to your accountant and say, hey, I've coded all these transactions, and I'll ask my accountant, can you take a look and let me know where I should be reallocating them. They can reallocate them for you, or what have you. Now, what did I not do this time? So it usually tries to tell you. I thought I had selected but apparently not. So it'll try and give you an error message as to what went wrong. I could split this transaction if I wanted to into multiple accounts. I'm not going to here. I just want to process those. I also want to show you that without doing a business rule, I can still come in here because it's got a category match, and I can accept those transactions as well, even though there's no bank rule. It's going to ask me if I want to create a rule or add a rule. I'm going to say no, thank you at this moment in time. I've also got some transactions here where it's found a match, and it said, hey, I've got 2 transactions here for the Bank of any city. One is dated the 14th of December, and one is dated the 4th of January for 2022. Which of these does this apply for? So in this case, it makes the most sense that it would apply to the check that was written on the 14th. So it's automatically matched those. I can just hit that and click approve. I can now see that my bank transactions are processed. Now we see a check mark, which tells us our bank transactions are processed, but we see a difference between our opening balance and our in QuickBooks balance. And so that really gives you a clue that you really need to do a bank reconciliation. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to have time to go through the bank reconciliation today, but that if you ever see these out of match, that is something that you'll want to spend some time on. What I will commit to doing is coming back in another webinar and going through bank reconciliations as a specific part of the process to show you how to do those, because those are a really important step of the process that each of you need to do. But today, we just want to start with some of the basics, which is get your bank feed running, get coding transactions. So I'm going to hop over to the checking account now, assuming we've processed all our credit cards. And you can see we've got some more transactions in here. And again, I can create some rules for these. I can process these really fast. Again, let's go restaurant, and let's say, come on, meals and entertainment, select tax. And now you see what's nice is because I haven't set a tax code for that category before, it's now asking me if I want that to be a default, right? I'm going to then create my rule. Yes, funny. Oh, one of the things, actually, quick tip that I should show you. By default, it's only going to apply the rule to the account that you're in. I always like to apply it to all of my rules. And in this case, I'm going to now turn that on automatically. And I'm going to process that. And we'll see, oh, in this rule. Save that rule. And now you'll see is all those restaurant transactions, boom, they just completely disappeared. And now with that feed, anytime those transactions come in, they would automatically be processed without me having to do anything whatsoever. So Air Express, let's call this travel. Now, I don't have a travel category, so I can create a new one, which is nice. And oh, sorry, that's because I'm trying to do it on the customers, which it will allow me to create a new one if I wanted to, if something didn't exist either. So I'm going to call this travel expenses. I don't know what it really is. It's called 0 rated. And let's add that. Okay. ATM deposits, these are probably going to match the invoices. We got another travel expense. So you can see I can come through and I can do these categories without having to do much. And you can always just type in these things and process those without creating rank rules. Helps if I let actual add those transactions. And I could come through and I could process these all relatively quickly. Now, let's just do, this would be travel again. So one of the things you could do, actually one thing that might be interesting here. I'm going to create a rule this time. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to say it contains parking. And let's add another thing that also contains, and let's say any of these. There, should have done this before. And of course, we've got no more in there. So you can see I could have been able to put all these under one rule and call this travel. And now in the future, if it has parking or air, let's add another condition. Hotel. You can imagine you can add more and more conditions to this, taxi, and you can then create that rule and it'll process those transactions for you automatically. Email service. And I am an advocate for creating customers, but I'm just going through this pretty quickly. All this advertising. Want to get through processing these transactions. So bear with me. I want to get through all these. We're almost done. Again, I think Supply Depot, we said, if I recall, we said ask my accountant. I'm going to put it under ask my accountant there. Oh, come on, Andrew. I keep forgetting to do the tax. And now we're left with 3 transactions that are probably income based. So one of the things I do want to look at quickly is our sales. And so what we have under sales, we can see all our sales invoices. So we can see all the ones that are closed, ones that are still open, the ones that are overdue. So we can try and match those deposits to individual sales because odds are they made up of individual ones. I also want to show you that you can import transactions into your sales thing. And there's also things like SASET, which is another tool. If you're happy to do your invoicing in another product or your e-commerce or anything like that, you may end up importing your transactions as opposed to manually enter them. Or of course, if you are doing your billing to your client, you can create new invoices in here, as well as new payments. So when you get paid, payment would apply to a specific invoice. It might be a partial payment, it could be a full payment. So QuickBooks has the ability to manage partial payments, which is odds are why those individual transactions didn't match to a specific invoice, is because they might have been partial payments towards one invoice. And I will jump back to show you that, but I wanted to show you that you can come in here, create your sales transactions, and of course, be able to track them as far as, what's outstanding. What did I do? What's outstanding, and which clients are overdue, and which ones are just regular open invoices. So it gives you this nice little transaction bar, so you can see how many estimates you have, what your unbilled activity is, how many overdue, how many open invoices, and how many were paid in the last 2 days. You can, of course, go into individual invoices. You can go by customer, you can go by product and services. So lots of drill down capability before you even get into the reports section of QuickBooks Online, which is a really important and powerful session. And I've already gone quite a bit longer than what I hoped to do, but there's so much to cover with QuickBooks Online. And one of the things that we will be doing is coming back on a regular basis to dive deeper into specific areas, like we talked about doing the bank reconciliations and how important that is. But if you can start by just doing your sales invoices and your cash coding on your bank statement and your credit card, this is where you're going to hit the 80-20 rule. You're going to be able to get 80% of the transactions done in 20% of the effort, and just keep on this every couple of months, come in here and process a handful of transactions. What you're going to find is that as you come in each couple of months, there's going to be less work to do because you have more rules created, it's recognized more transactions, the process just gets smoother and smoother and faster and faster. Now, one of the most important things that I also want to touch on before we jump out of here is the reports, because as I said at the very beginning of this session, garbage in, garbage out. So if you are misallocating, processing transactions in the wrong place, we're going to have to go back and reallocate things and redo things. So there are some tools in here to allow you to be able to go in and look at different things. So one of the most important things that you're going to look at is, so we've gone through the banking tab, we've gone through the sales. I'm going to ignore cash flow for now, and I'm going to ignore expenses for now as well. But expenses are a place where you could enter individual transactions. Like imagine if you had cash paid transactions. So you might want to enter in a transaction that doesn't appear on your bank statement or credit card. So you might go in there. Projects I'm going to ignore for now. Payroll I'm going to ignore for now. But reports I do want to drive into, because reports are where you're going to be able to go in and be able to look at some of this information and be able to see whether it makes sense to you from a high level. So one of the most important things when it comes to financial data is the ability to zoom in and zoom out. So we want to be able to zoom in on the individual transactions when we think the numbers at a high macro level don't make sense, but we want to be able to zoom out and look at a high level. Does what we see here make sense? And that's where our reporting is going to come into play. And the QuickBooks Online comes with a whole bunch of standard reports, okay? And then, of course, you can create custom reports. You can build out your management reports, and you can decide over what period those cover, and you can customize these. These are great. The standard ones you're probably going to be looking at are potentially your accounts receivable agent summary. For those of you who are not familiar with the term accounts receivable, this is for all your invoicing, and this tracks, how long it's taking your customers to pay you. So when you issue an invoice, that moves into your accounts receivable because you're expecting to receive money from your accounts, your customers. So your accounts receivable is potentially an important report, but for a lot of our clients who are service-based professionals dealing through staffing agencies who are getting paid quite regularly, that's less of a concern. So the bigger things that you're going to be looking at are your balance sheet and your profit and loss. Now, the balance sheet is where we tend to lose people a little bit. So I'm going to start with our profit and loss. And our profit and loss statement is the easiest thing for most people to understand because it's your income and your individual expenses. So if your individual expenses are more than your income, you have a loss. If your income is more than your individual expenses, then you have a profit. Pretty straightforward. Most people are familiar with this. They know what income is. They know what expenses are. They may not know what expenses they can deduct and what categories. And again, we have a whole other webinar dedicated to what you can deduct and our chart of accounts and different things. So I encourage you to come check that out. But in here, we're keeping track of all your revenue and expenses. The things that you are not going to find on here are things like your assets and your liabilities. Again, this is where we tend to confuse people, and we'll talk about them briefly when we go look at the balance sheet. But for now, this is your revenue and your expenses. Where it does confuse some people is this concept of cost of goods sold, which again, for most of our service-based professionals, you don't have this, so it becomes irrelevant. But your cost of goods sold are basically any expenses that you have that are specific to the cost of the goods you were selling, cost of goods sold. So what happens is when you make a product or you are buying a product and selling it online. So if you're in the product-based business, you would have costs like the inventory related to every sale, but you don't just expense all your purchases because you have this thing called inventory, which is an asset that you have to keep track of on your balance sheet. So when you make purchases, it goes to the balance sheet item, which is your asset inventory. And then when you sell it, you move only what you sold from the inventory asset into your cost of goods sold and expense the cost of that individual item that you have sold. Again, in most service-based businesses, you don't need to worry about that, but I just want to cover it at a high level so people understand the concept. Your gross profit is basically your income minus your cost of goods sold, which is a really important thing to know and understand if you're in that other type of business. One thing I also like is you'll see that this Ask My Accountant rolls up underneath the total of expenses. So this is a great way to like, hey, this pinpoints a category that we might need to drill into, which is great. So I can come in here and I can go and drill down, zoom in on those individual transactions. I can see all these transactions that I've just coded there and be able to reallocate those if necessary. So I could go into any one of these individual transactions and then I could just change that to a different category if I felt it was so appropriate. So that's one of the important things about being able to have these reports, and you can do individual account reports, but usually we like to look at as accountants, the profit and loss as the number one place for our starting point. In addition to being able to drill down, we can customize this report right here on this page. So by default, this has gone year to date, but I might want to choose from one of these default custom dates. So this week to date, this month to date, this quarter, fiscal year is a common one that we will see. You'll also might be able to choose as a very specific period you want to look at. So we can change the date range that we want to look at. We can also display what columns we want to see. So I might want to see this by months. And then I can just click run the report, and now it's breaking it down into the individual months. I might also want to say, hey, I don't want to see any non-zero rows, and I don't want to see any non-zero columns, which might be helpful. I don't know if we have any, but this is just to eliminate those blanks. I might also want to compare. I can compare to a previous period, previous year, the year to date. Previous period probably one of the most common. But within that, I can also say, hey, do I want to compare that to an actual dollar figure change? Like, do I want the dollar figure change when I can do that comparison, or do I want a percent change? So if I click this without choosing one of those, it's just going to show me the year-over-year comparison. But if I go back in here and I say, okay, now I want to see the dollar change, it'll also give me the dollar change. So this is the current, this is the previous period, this is the change. So in this case, previous period is like the previous month. And you might, for example, want to say, okay, well, I don't want previous month. I want to compare that to the previous year. So I'm going to eliminate that. And again, I might not want to know the actual dollar change. I might want to know the percentage change. And now I can go in here and I can see, okay, what percentage change did I have year over year from the current to the prior year? current to the prior year. Current, and there's no data in here at this point in time, but I just wanted to show you that functionality that you can have within the reporting. So that's sort of the core of what I wanted to cover today. I do want to just quickly mention that QuickBooks Online does have a mileage tracker. If you were not tracking mileage, this is a really important thing because it's one of the #1 audited accounts or expense accounts in Canada. And that's because CRA knows that most of you are not tracking your mileage. And so when they come back in and audit you and you don't have their mileage log, you lose that deduction. So, you know, technology simplifies this process. If you turn this on, it will automatically track the mileage for you anytime you get in the car. And then you just decide whether it's business or personal. But if you don't turn this on, it's not tracking it for you. So go in, if you've got QuickBooks Online, turn this on. With that, I want to wrap up. I know we haven't covered absolutely every part of QuickBooks Online. Unfortunately, in 45 minutes, there's no way we really can. What I do want to make sure we let you guys know is we'll be coming back and doing more of these sessions on a regular basis and diving deeper into other sections. Like I've said, bank reconciliations, I want to do a whole dedicated session to that. We've already got existing sessions on, you know, what categories and how to expense things, which isn't QuickBooks specific, but is helpful when it comes to your bookkeeping. And I'd love to hear from you guys, you know, what are the areas that you'd like to see us dive deeper on? Because we put on these sessions with the desire to help you organize your finances, create wealth, and transform wealth into a legacy. So we do need your feedback to tell us what content you want to give. So with that, again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm going to sign off here on Instagram. So thank you for those of you who joined us live on Instagram. If you are on our Zoom room, I'm going to open it up to a Q&A once I end this. So thank you, Instagram. And if you are on Facebook, or if you're on Instagram, hop over to Facebook, and we will allow questions from Facebook to be pushed over to Zoom as well. So end that. Thank you very much. And now let me go back over here. I'm going to stop my share. Okay, so thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. If you've got any questions, please post them in the Q&A. I will do my best to answer them there. Again, if you have something that might be a little bit deeper or require a deeper conversation, we will maybe come back with a whole other session. If you don't have any Q&A, I will assume that I've just given you answers to all of your questions without even needing to. Now, again, if any of you are looking to purchase QuickBooks Online, you can purchase them through our website. So feel free to reach out to us, and we do get some special discounts on QuickBooks Online, which does deepen